And so if you're the Chiefs and somebody becomes available that you feel confident in, go for it. I will say this, though. If there's any position group I feel comfortable with in terms of like just coaching them up, figuring it out, it's that. Yeah. Like it's that group of guys. So I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll be okay. And they have a pretty damn good coordinator as well to figure that out. But I do think behind Watson is where I look at it. And guard, there's some question marks.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into That Football Show here on KC Sports Network, presented by our friends at Ben Holiday, bottled and bond bourbon at Holiday Distillery. You can go find them in Weston, Missouri. Go check them out if you are in the Kansas City area. If you're just, coming up to KC for a little bit of for a trip, just north of Kansas City, Weston, Missouri, you can find Holiday Distillery. I'm Tucker Franklin, hanging out as always with Matt Verderame. Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm relaxing. Trying not to think about my college football playoff season going down the tubes. With Virginia just can't handle the road games in the ACC. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, tough conference, tough road games, tough places to play in the ACC. Got some tough.
Really is true.
And it's not easy, as we were talking before we started the podcast. Not easy to play on the road in that game.
No.
They do make it realistic in that regard of like you have no idea what play you're running. My favorite thing before we dive fully into like the NFL is when you sometimes, we talked about how you can't like see the play. If you go to preview the play, you can't really see it. Yeah. But then sometimes they'll just show you a play that's a wrong play. They're like that you didn't call this play, but we're going to show it to you anyway. And it's just like they want you to be as confused as possible, which bumps the realism up.
Yes, it's true. It's how I imagine a lot of bad teams in the NFL, like they just get to the line of scrimmage and they're like, we're just going to run the duo, hope for the best here.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those teams here coming up later. Including a team that signed Nathan Peterman. But let's talk about the Chiefs first. On this podcast, you guys know the drill by now. If you guys have been here before, we talk about the Chiefs and then we talk about the rest of the NFL. So if you get to the back half and say, "Why are you guys dog walking the Atlanta Falcons?" That's why you know, because we talk about the NFL and they deserve it. So we only dog walk in 360 windmill dunk on teams that deserve it. That's the rule.
Yeah.
First, let's start with the Chiefs. They had their second preseason game showed in front of a crowd in Kansas City at Arrowhead for the first time. Got to see Xavier Worthy. Yep. Matt, what was your biggest takeaway from that game?
My biggest takeaway from that game is that Xavier Worthy is going to play a lot more than I thought he was going to as a rookie. Like that kid can play right now. And it's not because he's fast and he put up some numbers against the second team, the Detroit Lions. Like that would be a stupid reason. It's because of how well he runs routes. And when you can do that at that level this quickly, you're going to earn the trust of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Like that's what's going to be the byproduct of that. I mean, I thought the most impressive play of his game had nothing to do with him catching a pass. Like everybody's focused on the 38, 39-yarder, and then the touchdown. I thought it was the play right after the first deep ball. He ran a go ball route, and 3 Lions just took off with him. And Justin Watson was wide open for 15 yards. And by the way, if you'll get the still shot of that, they could have hit 3 different guys 15 yards. They're all wide open. Rice was open. Kelsey was open. That's because Xavier Worthy took 3 defenders with him to the end zone.
Right.
And, then you watch that touchdown, and it's this little, like, cross route. And you're like, okay. And he's kind of like 230, 2/3 maybe in terms of top speed, and then just turns it on and blows by the corner, and he's just gone. It's the easiest throw in the world for White. Just lobs it up there.
Right.
Walking touchdown. I just think Worthy, his presence, his speed, but most importantly, his route running, like I think it's just going to open up everybody else on the offense because you have to figure in 2 deep safeties when you play the Chiefs. And if you don't do that, it's a foot race to the end zone. They're going to win the foot race. So I thought Worthy's ability to run routes was huge.
Having that threat of Worthy, as you mentioned, just having the threat of him on the field. We talk about this a lot with, go back to like the Sammy Watkins era of the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about that a lot with just having Sammy Watkins on the field is a threat. They have to pay attention to Sammy Watkins. That's why he opens. It's not necessarily his production on the field. Yeah, that was nice to have Sammy Watkins' production, But having him on the field to have the threat of, having Sammy Watkins' production numbers is a big enough needle mover for the rest of the offense. That is appearing to be the same thing for Xavier Worthy. Just having the threat of him being able to go deep is something that the Chiefs haven't had since they traded Tyreek Hill. It brings back a vertical stretch component of the game. And yeah, he got away with a little bit of a false start there on the first play that he did catch that deep ball, that 40-ish yarder catch. Look, the rest of the boys play. I think there was a face mask that went by on that first drive anyway, too. So, letting him play, I'm okay with it. You don't need to throw a ton of penalties in the preseason. You don't need to belabor these games longer than they really need to be. But I do think that's a great point that you brought up. Say goodbye to one high safeties. You're not getting cloud cover one anymore. You're not getting any one high safety looks. You're going to be seeing a lot of two safeties trying to keep everything underneath because, boy, golly, Xavier really does look like he's a real deal.
Yeah, he does. He does. I think, look, when they get Hollywood Brown back, whether that's week 1, week 2, whatever the case may be, I mean, they've got two guys on the outside that pretty much just can run or outrun anybody. It's going to be different than last year. I think that is a safe assumption. And they have Rice, who might be the biggest slot receiver in the history of the league, running around. I mean, you've got Kelsey and Rice inside, and you've got Worthy and Brown outside. I've said this all season. I mean, I really do feel this way. They're going to make coverages very predictable. Teams are just going to have to sit in too high zone looks. They're going to. How many teams are going to go against Kansas City and go, you know what? Single high, man, press. Who the hell's doing that?
Right.
And if they do, God bless them, they're going to give up 40 points. I think the Chiefs, what's coming. Cover 2, cover 4. You're going to get some man match stuff. You're going to get a lot of zone. And if you're Kansas City, if you're Andy Reid, if you're Patrick Mahomes, you can just dial up the week going, all right, look, 80% of our installs against zone looks.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, we'll have some man beaters. We'll have some answers there. We'll have our goal line. We'll have our third down. But, yeah. I mean, what you're getting. There's not going to be too many teams that are going, let's line up man across the board against them and see what happens. Right? Last year, you could do that.
Yeah.
You could absolutely do. You could sit there and man. You could play zone. You could play a single high. You could play 2 high. You could really throw any coverage at them and feel pretty confident that you had a handle on it. You can't do that this year. And I think now the advantage flips to the Chiefs. Right? I think they're going to walk to the line of scrimmage and Mahomes will be, oh, yeah, all right, cover 2.
Yeah.
And, he knows what you're doing. You got a problem.
Yeah, I definitely do think so. I do think it's really interesting when you just talk about, I was thinking about this. The offense this year obviously feels like a huge improvement from last year, just based on who they brought in at wide receiver. The running back room is a bit thin, and that has been a topic, Matt, that I think you and I have talked about for a very long time, is the lack of depth there at the running back room. And it doesn't really feel like that's necessarily hindering this team at all when it comes to the lack of depth. It still feels like this offense can still fire on all cylinders without a bona fide RB2, I will say. Without a guy who is a clear-cut RB2. Now, Pierce Carson Steele has kind of stepped up and taken that RB2 role. He's getting reps with Patrick Mahomes doing all kinds of stuff. Joshua Briscoe wrote about it on the Chiefs on SI site that they have there. He wrote about look at what Carson Steele did in this game. He pass blocked. He ran play action. He ran out for pass reps. He ran the football. He did a little bit of everything. He stopped a blitzer in the gap. Now, let's be fair, not a very good blitz.
It was not a good blitz. It looked like me trying to blitz. The guy ran in there and I was like, I don't know about this, and just kind of stopped.
He made contact with Carson. Was like, I don't know if I'm actually about this life. And look, Carson Steele, he did pick up the blitz in the gap. He looked good, and I think that he's kind of emerged as the RB2 of this group. Which I'm a big Carson Steele guy. We got to sit down with him at the East West Shrine Bowl. I have been aware of his game for a while. I always had a feeling he could come on and have an impact with this team. I just didn't anticipate it to be running back 2 in year 1.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, nobody was taking over Pacheco's spot. Beyond that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire look, we all understand the reason, and I respect it. He's not available a lot. Like, he's sick a lot. And while I respect his reasoning, and I commend him for his honesty and his openness, this is a business, and they're a football team. And there's going to come a point where they go, look, man, we love you, and we'll help you. We'll do whatever we can to help. But, like, we can't go into the season wondering if you're going to be there this game or that game or this, practice or that practice. I mean, I think that might be part of the fact why Carson Steele's been able to elevate. He's gotten a lot of reps. He's gotten a lot of time. And Deneric Prince on the other side of it, he's not really done anything that you'd go, oh, you've got to put him in there.
Right.
So I wouldn't say he's been bad, but he just hasn't stood out. And Carson Steele, listen, one thing about them, if you can pass protect as a back, you're going to get time. I mean, Jerick McKinnon, part of the reason he was there, the biggest part of the reason he was there for years, was Jerick McKinnon would stick his face into a linebacker and he'd block his ass off.
Yeah.
That was, look, yeah, all the stuff, like he had 10 touchdowns in 1 year, and believe me, they would tell you the most valuable part of Jerick McKinnon's game was on third down. If there was some blitzer coming in, Jerick McKinnon would pick him up. And you need that. There's value in that. Pacheco's a much better blocker than he was when he first came in, but, if Carson Steele can come in there on third down and pick up a blitzer, believe me, that's going to help him make the team.
So that's the thing I think is so interesting about this Chiefs offense is there is that variability in the running back room. And running back's already a position where you've got to have like 2 or really 3 guys that you kind of trust to carry the football or just be back there in the backfield. Now, can they get around it? Yeah, I think that you saw Andy Reid scheme around having bad wide receivers last year. I'm sure he could scheme around having a thin running back room. But I do feel really confident about this offense heading into this final preseason game, which we're not going to see any starters with that's why we didn't start with this final preseason game. You're not going to see any of the starters from both sides of it. It's just it's a bubble game. It's who can play themselves onto the roster. Yep. That's going to be a big audition tape for a lot of these guys with other teams as well, because a lot of these guys you're seeing play on Thursday, tomorrow night, actually, now that I think about it, a lot of these guys are not going to be playing football again. And like this could be like the final time they play a football game, or for the team, for the Kansas City Chiefs, it could be the final time. But nevertheless, I don't have the same confidence that I do in the defense that I did going into last year, Matt. When you start to look around this defense, there's a lot of thinness on this roster I think that they didn't have last year. Obviously, they had an incredible cornerback duo of Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed. We might look back at that in history and be like, holy cow. They might be the most underrated cornerback duo in the history of me being a football fan, truthfully, in my lifetime. And now you're looking at a cornerback, too, where you don't really have a clear-cut answer. Everyone keeps getting hurt. Nazeeh Johnson, he's been coming back from a knee injury after a very good camp last year. He's been dealing with a knee and a hamstring injury as well. Joshua Williams landed on the injury report yesterday with a hamstring injury. Jalen Watson had a shoulder cleanup in the offseason on his labrum. So, like, a lot of the suspects that you would anticipate to step up and take that cornerback 2 role haven't really been all the way healthy, and no one has really made themselves a clear-cut cornerback 2. Matt, does that worry you at all heading into the season?
It honestly doesn't that much. Like, I think it's a little overblown in the sense. I think Jalen Watson's just going to be their cornerback too. And I felt like that all year long, like all season. I know he needed the shoulder surgery.
Right.
Played with a torn labrum all year last year.
Insane, by the way.
And played well with it. Like, was good for them. Played well. People forget because you're like, well, Sneed, McDuffie. Jalen Watson started for them all last year. Because Sneed was one outside guy. McDuffie pretty much played in the slot all year long. Watson was the other guy. So I'm not really like concerned. Like, if Jalen Watson's our number 2 corner, okay, fine. He was our number 2 boundary corner last year. And I'm not that worried about that. I think the biggest difference is going to be that Shamari Connor is going to play some in the slot and McDuffie's going to play outside. And how does that affect everything? Because McDuffie's going to now take over Sneed's role.
Right.
Moving inside, playing outside, kind of that do-it-all role. Watson's role is not going to change. Like, Watson's still going to be number 2 on the outside. Like, that's what he's going to be. He'll probably see some more snaps, but his role is going to be basically the same. The third spot is going to be the thing where, now it's like Connor is going to play in the slot when they move McDuffie outside, or if McDuffie stays inside, Connor comes off the field and reverts back to safety, and then who is the other corner? Is it Williams? Probably. I worry a little about Joshua Williams as a starter. That concerns me to some degree. Najee Johnson, I've never seen Najee Johnson play a meaningful NFL snap.
Right.
So, yeah, sure. That part of it worries me a little bit. But I don't have any worry about McDuffie and Watson. My bigger concern is behind those guys. And so if you're the Chiefs and somebody becomes available that you feel confident in, go for it. I will say this, though. If there's any position group I feel comfortable with in terms of just coaching them up, figuring it out, it's that.
Yeah.
It's that group of guys. So I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll be okay. And they have a pretty damn good coordinator as well to figure that out. But I do think behind Watson is where I look at it and guard. There's some question marks.
There definitely is. And you're right. Dave Merritt has done a very good job with defensive backs. That is one spot where I feel comfortable with. And their safety room is loaded. Their safety room, they have a really good safety room.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable there. Linebacker. See, I just think when I start to go through the positions, Matt, I just feel like linebackers a bit thin. Defensive end, their edge room, incredibly thin. You're looking at, you usually keep what? 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 edges on a final roster, and you're looking at 4 for the Chiefs right now. They're going to take more probably defensive tackles than they take edge rushers, just because of that's how the roster is constructed currently.
Right.
I don't love how their defensive line is constructed. I understand that it was successful last year and everything like that, but would love to see some step forward from some guys at the bottom half of that edge room.
So I think the edge room, you look at it from when they're all there. It's Menahu, it's Dan, and it's Karlaftis, and then Jones on third down, right? So, I mean, my bigger concern is a D tackle, it's Jones, and then it's just, I don't know. They'll stop the run. They'll do that.
They got a lot of one techs. We'll say that. They got a lot of one techs. They don't have a ton of 3 techs.
Right. They've got Noddy and Mike Pennell. And I'll tell you what, Mike Pennell against the run is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Mike Pennell is the strongest human being and the biggest human being I've ever interviewed in my life.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about them stopping a run in the middle. I am more concerned about them getting a push beyond Chris Jones. Now, Amenahu can play inside, and so can Dana, and so they have that versatility. Look, that's been my big hot take all year. I think they're going to lead the league in sacks. I really do. I think Karlaftis is really good. I think Jones, you can make an argument for Jones pretty much every year. It might be the defensive player of the year. Amenahu, when he's healthy, is terrific. Dan is good for 6-7 sacks. They got a lot of guys. That being said, to your point, I don't love the depth at D tackle.
Yeah.
And without Amenahu, the next guy up is FAU, and he has not been great in the preseason. So,
correct.
Look, I feel like we're talking about a whole hell of a lot of first world problems with this team. Man, I don't know who that fifth edge guy is. I don't know who the fourth corner is. You're yeah, well, you know what? And neither does anyone else in football.
Yeah.
But if you're nitpicking, sure. I mean, those are definitely a couple things you look at and go, well, if this happens and if that happens, it becomes an issue.
Steve Spagnuolo was asked about kind of the depth issues and the injuries that he had at the podium. This would have been on Tuesday. Specifically about adding a veteran cornerback is what he was asked about. He said, I think if you were to talk to Coach Reed or Brett, I think they'd tell you they're always looking. They've got their eyes on them, and typically Brett will come to me and say, can you look at this guy and that guy? So I'm sure that'll happen in the next few days, is what he says. Matt, I started to do a little bit of looking, too, after that quote. I was like, I'll pull up the spot track list of 2024 free agents at the quarterback position, see who else is out there. Can I interest you in a 31-year-old Xavier Howard?
No.
How about a 28-year-old, almost 29-year-old J.C. Jackson?
Oddly, maybe.
Yeah, now that one is probably the only one I'm just like, I could be talked into it. And the other one, the only other one that I really had, let's just see Steven Nelson on this list. That made me laugh. Adoree Jackson. He's almost 29 as well.
He's not good.
Correct.
He's not good.
Here's a little tidbit for the folks listening at home. If you're still available in August, probably not good. That's usually how this tends to go. Patrick Peterson also available, but he is 34 years old. So is Eli Apple. He's available. But
My God. If they bring in Eli Apple, we're going to do an emergency pod, and I am going to go cat a tie for an hour. No.
He's also bad, is what I was going to add to the end of that one.
Our career. Patrick Peterson would be hilarious because Chiefs fans wanted him for like 7 years.
Yes.
And now it's like, here he is. He's more of a safety these days.
Kello Weatherspoon? He's still out there.
He's not. Yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody really who's going to move a needle. I do think, I'm with you with J.C. Jackson. Like, J.C. Jackson could be the one that I'm like, okay, I'm veteran depth. I'll listen to it. And, the other guy that was talked about is I think Stephon Gilmore probably would have moved a needle for me just as like a veteran depth signing. He was 1 year, $10 million. And like that might have been a little too rich for Kansas City's blood. I think I was almost Sterling, and we were talking about Stephon Gilmore, and I think I said 1 for 5.
Yeah, 1 for 5, a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of where I land on that. So Stephon Gilmore goes to the Vikings. Vikings get all the good stuff.
Yes, they truly are the team that's just the luck keeps on finding them. Right. I mean, J.C. Jackson would be interesting. J.C. Jackson, I feel like, would be the quintessential, like the Chiefs would bring him in, and then he would just, like Dave Merritt would fix him.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, oh, wow, like he looks great. And Chargers fans would just look for, like, the nearest bottle of bleach, right? Like, just, but other than him, yeah, man, I'm not, like, the rest of those guys. I almost think, truthfully, at that point, like, if they're really that hard up for another corner, maybe that's when, like, you start calling some of these teams who know they're bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, honestly. You make a call to like New England or something. You make a call to some, and maybe like, I honestly think too, part of this, do you not just wait until you get into like, week 6, week 7?
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
they're not going to lose these games to the Raiders, because, and I know the Raiders are later, but like the point stands, they're not going to lose these games to teams like that because cornerback 3 isn't rock solid. Like they're just then it's not going to happen. You're not going to be going, well, my God, Joshua Williams is the reason they're losing these games. Like they will figure it out.
Right.
And I think if you get to like week 7, maybe that's when you trade for Gilmore. Maybe at that point you call the Vikings up. Like, hey, listen, we'll take on the rest of his salary, and we'll give you a 5th round pick. I mean, I think that is more, likely than going out and making some big splash move right now. I just don't see him doing it.
Last move before we go and like take a break and we flip to the rest of the NFL did have some impact on the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs could have been in on. I don't know if there's ever anything officially reported that the Chiefs were in on Matthew Judon. He does get traded from the Patriots to the Falcons for a 3rd round pick. Doesn't agree to a new deal either. I think that was really interesting. There's an interesting little segment on Hard Knocks if anyone watched that. I thought that was really insightful. And Ryan Poles and the Bears, they wanted to go after him. New England accepted they met the offer of a 3rd round pick. They said, yeah, no problem. We'll give you a 3rd round pick, but we want Judon to sign an extension with us. For the Bears, it makes sense, right? I mean, they would have a nasty defensive line if that happened. If they would have got Matthew Judon too. Judon ultimately does not sign a new contract. I wonder if that was a big sticking point for him as he wanted to play out this deal. And then he wanted to go out and get another deal. Only due $6 million, so I think financially could have made sense for the Chiefs, especially if you're talking about a 3rd round pick. Matt, truthfully, I would have given up the Titans' 3rd round pick for Matt Judon, but I don't know where you stand on that, and I don't even know if that was the same price, right? Because it's not the same price for every team, and it's not like the Patriots are going to be contending, right? So it's not like they're giving him to like their biggest competition in the AFC, right? I get that. Like, I don't think that factored into it at all. But maybe that price just wasn't the same for the Chiefs.
Would have been genuinely hilarious if you did factor in.
Now I can't do
it, boys. Might see him in the AFC title game. Can't risk it. That would have been amazing. Like, I would have loved for the new GM, Elliott Wolf, to have just come out and be like, listen, Kansas City actually gave us a second-round offer. Oh, we weren't about to see him in the playoffs.
Couldn't do that.
That would have been unbelievable. I would have actually, I think, become deceased out of the moment that I saw that video. Look, I think that giving up a third-round pick, quite honestly, for him, for the Chiefs, I personally wouldn't have. Only because I obviously, with my bold prediction, if you will, like, I think their pass rush is good. Like, so if you're the Chiefs, you're not taking Karlaftis off the field for him. Yeah. I'm not saying he's not better, but, like, you're not taking him off the field. So who's he replacing? A Meadow? Like,
for those first however many weeks he's out, sure, I think that's
like,
that's
they don't give a shit because they're going to be 5-1 anyway, right? Like,
yeah,
so they're just looking at this from a January perspective.
Right.
So you have Karlaftis, you have Ameno, you just gave Mike Dana 3 years and $24 million. Now you can play Dana inside, like, so you could argue that's fine. I'm not saying Judon would make him better, but for me, if I'm the Chiefs, a top 100 pick with all the guys that they've got to pay, that's a valuable pick. Like, yeah. I honestly, man, the only way I'm giving up a top 100 pick is if I'm getting a guy who's going to be somebody that they pay, like, that's around for years. Like for now, look, this has never happened. Okay, because Denver would never do this. Let's say that Patrick Surtain, they were just like, we've got to move him. We're terrible. Okay, we've seen Bo Nix, and we understand our situation. And Denver was willing to trade into the Chiefs. And the Chiefs were like, all right, we'll give you a first and a third round pick for him. Fine, because you're going to pay him. Like, you're going to keep him. I have, or I'm trying to think even of another example I could give you. But, like, a guy, like that. Like, if like the Giants are like, we'll trade you Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to pay him. The Chiefs need those picks so they can keep replenishing the roster and pay Mahomes $60 million and pay Kelsey what they're paying him and pay all these, hell, we all expect Humphrey's going to get paid.
Yeah.
Like, so that's kind of how I would look at it.
Makes sense. I mean, it makes sense why they didn't do it. It was one of those things where, like, I could talk myself into it if they did it, and I could talk myself into it if they didn't. So it was one of those things where it was definitely a fix for the first, let's just say 6 weeks, right? That Charles Minshew not there.
Yeah.
It would have been a fix for that. But yes, they are looking towards January, which makes a whole lot of sense for a team that spends a lot of their time playing football in January.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, let's be real for the Chiefs. The preseason does not end on Thursday. It ends in about Thanksgiving. and then at that point, they're like, all right, let's ramp it up a little bit here, fellas. Let's get cracking for 6 weeks. I mean, I've come to the conclusion with them that they legitimately spend the first, like, 2.5 months of the year just trying to figure out, like, what they want to do in January.
Mm-hmm.
There are absolutely games when you watch them where they don't even roll out, like, a B-level play sheet. They're like, it's fine. It's Denver.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. It's Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Like, we're going to play like we would play in, like, week 1 of the preseason. And we're still going to win. And that's, if you can get away with it, what the hell? Sure, go for it.
It's a great life to live if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and a Kansas City Chiefs fan. It makes games somewhat stressful sometimes, but nevertheless can't complain. Again, as Matt said at the beginning of the show, first world problems. So what we complain about here as Chiefs fans is first world problems.
To that point, while we're here, and we've got a few minutes, what is the game? Because God knows there's at least going to be one. What is the game that in the middle of the third quarter you're going to be apoplectic because they should have won the game by 20 points and it's tied and they've committed like 12 penalties?
I'm pulling up their schedule right now so I can get it to you because their schedule is set up perfectly for that to happen, right? Like when you look at all the teams they play, it is perfect for that to happen.
Yeah, I've got guesses for this game.
God, the Saints would be one of them that I would just be like, why are they not winning by 42 points?
Before the schedule came out, the Saints and the Bucs were the two games.
Yeah, both on Monday night too.
And I was like, these are going to be like 1 o'clock games East Coast time. And then they both end up on Monday night. And I was like, well, that kind of takes some of this thing out of my argument. But I actually am with you. Like, I still think that Saints game, even though it's on Monday Night Football, they're going to be so uninspired by looking across at Derek Carr and Dennis Allen. They're just going to be, yeah, all right, buddy. Yeah, all right. And then, yeah, we're going to be looking at 17-16, like going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Christmas song against Pittsburgh could be another one that's a hot candidate. But I don't think that they'll let what happened on Christmas last year happen again.
See, that's why. The Pittsburgh one I don't see is one of those games. Because they will be keyed up to the hilt for that Christmas game after what happened a year ago. That game, the Black Friday game on national TV against the Raiders at Arrowhead.
Right, yeah.
My game, and they'll still probably end up winning by 3 scores because this team stinks. But like Carolina to me is that classic. They will be favored by 17 points. And it'll be halftime, and they'll be winning like 13-9 because they just are so unmotivated by the entire thing. I also somewhat worry about the Atlanta game. It's Sunday Night Football, but they're playing the Ravens and the Bengals before it.
Yep.
And then also keep in mind that they're going to get to Atlanta on Saturday night. And Atlanta is a good party town if you want to find some fun time.
Mm-hmm.
They know they don't have to be up early the next day because it's a Sunday night game. So I could absolutely see the Chiefs just being like just a lot of Pedialyte at about 2:00 in the afternoon as they're trying to get themselves right. But it is Kirk Cousins in prime time.
True.
And it's like, which of those two things do you believe in is a bigger problem? And it's probably Kirk Cousins in primetime.
I also think, if I remember correctly, Atlanta's coming off of like a Monday night game.
They are. It's a short week for them. They're playing in Philly the week prior.
Yeah. I also just looked up the line for Chiefs Panthers. 7.5 to the Chiefs. So go ahead, run over to DraftKings Sportsbook and put as much weight as you can on minus 7.5 right now.
Maybe by 7.5 points against Carolina.
Yep.
I mean, I get it because right now it's so far out. Like they're like protecting themselves against injuries and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Bro, if they're not. If the Holmes is upright for that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you just got
5-6.
You just got to get off the plane. You just got to show up for that one.
I mean, Steve Spagnuolo against Bryce Young is going to be unfortunate.
He's not going to be able to see what's coming, truthfully. Yeah, literally and figuratively. He will not be able to see what's coming.
There are some games this year with Spagnuolo against some of these quarterbacks I am genuinely very excited about. Like, I would say Derek Carr, but Derek Carr's at least seen Spags enough.
Yeah.
All right. And he's a veteran. But Bo Nix twice.
Yep.
Gardner Minshew twice.
Yep. We'll talk about Gardner later.
Yeah. Bryce Young. Russell Wilson, even though he's seen him, it's always hilarious. Like, Russell Wilson.
Well, could be Justin Fields at that point. Who knows?
Either way, Justin Fields didn't throw for 100 yards last year in a 41-7 blowout. I mean, Deshaun Watson, right? And Spagnuolo at this point in his career. There are a lot of guys, and Spags has owned Lamar Jackson in his career. Like, Spags has taken Lamar to the cleaners over and over and over and over. There are a lot of games this year that you look at and go, man, that could be not great for the other side. And then like Herbert, like he's a very talented quarterback, but he's got like Ladd McConkey as his number one. So I don't know, man. What is the offenses in the AFC West outside of Kansas City? You just look at them and you're like, man, the Chiefs defense. Even if Joshua Williams is their third corner or whatever, like, man, not exactly murderer's row there.
Right.
Like really not that tough.
They're unfortunate they play in the division that they play in.
Which is wild, by the way.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago, people were like, I think the Chiefs are going to finish last. Raiders got Devontae Adams. Chargers went out and got Mack and J.C. Jackson. Broncos got Russ. They're going to cook now.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, that was the narrative. And since then, the Chiefs have won every Super Bowl played, and the other three teams are beyond in shambles.
Right.
So really goes to, like, the Chiefs have somehow, like, ascended, and the other three teams are just smoldering craters. It's incredible how fast life can come at you, which is also evidenced by the fact that Travis Kelce is part of Happy Gilmore 2. He's in the cast.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Breaking news on the podcast. That just makes sense for him to be in Happy Gilmore 2. I think that's just a marriage perfectly. Those two things just mesh together. I bet I cannot imagine how many times Travis Kelce has watched Happy Gilmore. I bet that's a movie on repeat for him. But we're going to take a break here. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some things going on around the NFL, some starting quarterbacks being named, some quarterbacks getting benched, and much more coming up right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
You know when you discover a new binge-worthy show or a song that you bump on repeat and you have to share it with your friends so they can experience just how awesome it is? That's kind of what it feels like when you discover Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's such an awesome deal. There's no way you can keep it to yourself. Friends don't let friends overpay for wireless. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and switch to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you and your squad with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNTFS. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNTFS. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNTFS. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Matt, we've got a lot of headlines concerning quarterbacks. The one I didn't mention before the break, Tua Tagovailoa is talking about Brian Flores a whole lot. He's feeling a little comfortable about his payday and his positioning here in
sure, we have thoughts.
South Florida. He did share his thoughts. I do want to start with that one because I do think that it probably is the most interesting one. What are your thoughts on Tua's thoughts on Brian Flores?
I have many thoughts on his thoughts. I don't have a problem with people being honest.
Yeah.
Like, all right, Tua, say what you're feeling. At the same point, to call someone indirectly, but clearly call someone, I believe the term was a terrible person. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot to say about somebody who's just your coach. And you say whatever you want about Brian Flores. That team was an atrocity when he took it over and left it in a pretty damn good spot. You know, like, I would argue that Mike McDaniel hasn't gotten a whole lot more out of that team as a team than Flores did. Flores went 9-8 with him.
Right.
I mean, Mike McDaniel's done what exactly? That's so much more impressive. I mean, offensively, sure, they're better. No one would argue that. As a team, they went, what did they go last year? 10-7?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, and, you know, Flores didn't have Tyreek Hill. So,
right.
I like, look, I get why Tua feels the way he does. Okay, no one likes to go to work every day and be told, like, you're not good at your job and you're not doing this right and you're not doing that right. And I understand that. I get why he feels that way. At the same point, it feels odd to talk about it like 2.5 years later,
right,
and kind of thrash the guy. I'm not going to sit here and say I have a huge issue with it from the standpoint that for the part of the country where I come from, I have no problem with somebody just laying somebody out in a slab verbally. That being said, if Brian Flores had come back and got in front of the podium the next day in Minnesota and been like, you know what, Tua sucks. No problem with it.
Yeah.
Fine. Because I got to tell you, whenever he plays anybody decent, he's not great. I really wonder if we're going to see in a couple of years when Tyreek Hill's either diminished or not there or whatever the case may be. Like, is Tua at that point any good? Or is this one of these deals where you're the Dolphins and you're going, oh my God, we have 3 years left on this contract? I don't know. But I don't have a problem with him being honest. I thought saying he's terrible was a little bit too much. But, okay. If that's how you feel, fine.
Yep. I'm with you on the part of it did seem odd. Like, it's like, why are you talking about this still? Type of deal. But like, yeah, I understand. I get the point where he's coming from. Nobody does like that. And to be fair, like, he probably wasn't very good when Brian Flores was there. Right. And that I don't think is too indisputable. Brian Flores got to the podium the next day. I watched his statement or his answer to the question, and he was just talked about how relationship building is like one of the biggest things in coaching, and like how much he values relationship building. And then he was just like, I'm just focused on these guys here. We got a lot of great leaders in Minnesota, and just started talking about his guys after it. I don't know if I disagree. Like, I do think you're right on like saying he's a terrible person. It's like, no, probably not true, right? Might be a terrible person to you. I don't think that's true. I know there's probably plenty of people that do enjoy Brian Flores, but it did kind of seem out of left field for me, and it was one of the things where their experience there probably wasn't pleasant. Like, those Dolphins teams were fine, but as you mentioned, like, Brian Flores didn't have Tyreek Hill, and that probably does add a win and a half, 2 wins when you just add a Tyreek Hill to your team. So I do think that there's probably, as in all stories, a lot more context needed than what we're getting just from one side of it. But yeah, it did seem just kind of. I was like, oh, we're gonna talk shit on Brian Flores today. I guess that's on the menu.
It felt kind of like when you're in college and you dated somebody as a freshman, and then you broke up, and like maybe it wasn't on great terms, and you go your separate ways, and like everybody's cool with it, like it's over. Mm-hmm. And then you see that person when you're a junior out at like a bar, and you're like, I'm fine. And then 30 minutes later, you find yourself being like, and one more thing, I'll tell you another thing about who you are as a human being. Like that. And then like you're just like at that point hoping like somebody gets involved. You just, all right, it's enough of this, but I don't know how to get out of this. Kind of feels, it felt very personal, which maybe to it is really personal.
Yeah, very much so.
Fine. I get it. But yeah, it's one of those deals where also if I'm Flores, I'm like, bro, you've won nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you're rich as hell. Congratulations on that. But you never beat anybody who's good. And if the weather's below 95 degrees, it's not great. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you could also go that route.
Yeah. Look, you're not going to see me defending Tua in a lot of circumstances.
I wouldn't.
I don't think that's a very sturdy hill to stand on. It's like standing on an anthill is what that is. Nevertheless, let's move on to more quarterback talk. Let's go to the AFC West. Let's stay in the AFC West. There's a couple of quarterback topics. Gardner Minshew is named the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. He will be the savior for Antonio Pierce's squad, which has Rex Ryan on it, by the way, or Rob Ryan. Rob Ryan is an advisor there, which
great, awesome. That means
jarring when I saw it the first time. Honestly, when I saw him sitting in front of a microphone for a press conference, I was like, "Wait a second, what is he still doing?"
I feel like the Raiders are going to be a lot of swagger and short on talent.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be a whole lot of talking going on, and not a whole lot of winning.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like that's where it's just headed,
right?
They play the Chargers week 1, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's Armageddon for both teams. Because whoever loses that game, it's just immediately like, oh, yeah, right, we're not good.
Mm-hmm.
If the Raiders are a serious team, which they're not, but if they are, they win that game. Right? Like if they're this big swashbuckling, oh, we're going to come into your house and we're going to steal your cookies. And Okay, then let's say it. Because the Chargers game, I believe, is at SoFi week 1. I believe. And that's a home game for the Raiders. Like, it's not like you can sit there and be, oh, so they got to go on the road. And no, they don't. Okay? It's a home game in a nicer state. It's actually probably a bigger home game than any home game they actually have, except for when they play the Chargers. So I don't want to hear anything out of the Raiders if they lose week 1. I don't want to hear it. And if the Chargers lose at home to the Raiders, I'm good. We'll see the Chargers in 2025. Okay, whoever loses that game, the pressure is going to be hilarious afterward. Look, I'm actually I feel two ways about the Minshew thing. On one hand, I'm a little surprised in the sense that what I was hearing, just not like from like team sources, but just like people who cover the team and whatnot. Like, some people thought O'Connell was going to win that job. Like, it has been ugly in camp this year. That has been a recurring. Nobody has played particularly well quarterback in camp for the Raiders this year. I have not found one person who's covered the Raiders who's been like, look great, better than I thought. So I'm a little surprised in that regard. In the other sense, they gave Minshew 2 years and $25 million?
I think so, yeah.
That's a good amount of money. You know, that's not nothing. Like, that's real. Like, it's low-level starter money, but it's starter money. I can't say that I'm shocked he's starting after that contract. And I knew from some people inside the team that they did view him when they signed him as like, oh, he's the starter. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all in all, okay, I'm going to go ahead and guess we're going to see both guys this year. Yeah. I feel like that's probably the most likely outcome because I don't think Gardner's taking the Raiders to glory. I don't think that's going to happen.
Is winning this quarterback battle like winning the NFC South? Because when you look at this, quarterback room, it is Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Nathan Peterman, and something named Carter Bradley.
Oh, man.
It is there. I'll just say for Gardner, not the stiffest competition he's ever faced in the quarterback battle.
You know what's amazing is he made the Pro Bowl last year.
Well, he played well. I don't know if well might be too generous.
No,
he played fine with Indianapolis.
I mean, he was throwing for 194 yards a game, 6.7 yards per attempt. He threw for 3,300 yards and 15 touchdowns with 9 picks. He's not good. Yeah, and I'm not listen. And I say it as somebody who actually, like, I've interviewed him. I've sat and talked to him one-on-one. I actually really like Gardner Minshew. Like, as a person, he's an awesome dude. And I will say this. I think he's a great backup. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like, to have him as a backup, I think is awesome. To have him as your starter, like, he's just not that guy. And, you know, he's not mobile. Like, his first year with Jacksonville, he actually ran for 344 yards. Last year, he ran 34 times for 100 yards. So, like, he's not going anywhere. He's just at this point, like, he takes a lot of sacks. He's not mobile. He's just who he is. Like,
he's not a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's a backup. That's what he is. That's what he is. He is a backup quarterback. And, you know, he's a really good one. But he's not more than that. By the way, would you like to take a guess what his middle name is?
Oh, gosh.
It is Flint.
Gardner Flint Minshew.
Awesome.
It's pretty sick. I like that.
Great guy. Great interview.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think as a starting quarterback, a little bit underwhelming.
Let's stick in the AFC West, and let's talk about Justin Herbert. He goes back to practice for the first time since July with his plantar fascia injury. Yep. I don't know if you saw this kind of contentious exchange between Daniel Popper and Jim Harbaugh. It seems like Jim Harbaugh is still hanging on to the college ways of doing media, which is not at all how it's done in the NFL. Yeah. And it's just very archaic. If you don't know about college media, they're like, we're not going to tell you anything. It's very secretive. They don't want to tell you anything. And Daniel Popper was just like genuinely asking him about like the backup quarterback, how they value the backup quarterback position now with Justin's injury. Like, do you now feel like you got to have a solid backup with Justin's injury? and he just like kind of got really defensive about it. And like that is a very college coach response to a very appropriate and a very measured question. A college coach response is to get like super defensive. And I saw that and I was like, look, I know he's coached in the NFL before, but he's been at the college ranks for a long time. He can't go back to the college ranks now for 4 years or something like that. Because
especially what's going on up there.
Yeah, so like he's gonna be here for a minute. He's gonna probably have to learn to play this game for a little bit.
Yeah, well, you know what? Harbaugh has always been an interesting guy.
Absolutely.
Say it kindly. He's a different dude. And I got to be fair. When the Chargers hired him, my first thought was like he's a really good hire. He'll fix what's going on with them.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. Don't love it so far. Like just bringing in Greg Roman and like 800 former Ravens, and just being like, we're going to run the ball 50 times a game. Okay, great. With who blocking? You have 2 tackles that are, all should be very good. Slater was very good.
Oh, yeah.
You have no interior. Who's running the ball? Gus Bus? He's getting 300 carries? Gus Bus is fun for like 10 carries a game. J.K. Dobbins, who feel for the guy, but like never on the field. Like he's going to just be a big part of this. They have no receivers. They have no tight end. Herbert is terrific, but he's coming off of this injury. And Herbert, by the way, quietly gets injured a lot.
Yes.
Like nobody talks, like everybody's like, Burrow. Yeah, Joe Burrow also gets hurt a good amount. I think that's fair at this point. Justin Herbert gets hurt a lot. Like for a guy who's as big as he is, he gets injured.
Mm-hmm.
Last year he missed a bunch of time at the end of the year. In week 2 in 2022, the Chiefs, it was Dana, right? Dana just crushed them and hurt his ribs. Now he's got this, the plantar fasciitis going on. Like, that's a lot over the course of 3 years. It's hurt a lot. So I just wonder, like with the Chargers and Harbaugh, I just assume, hey, look, he's going to come in, he's going to be the guy who was with the Niners, and maybe he will be. Like maybe he 1,000% will be. I still do think it's a better hire than most. I also look at it, though, and I do wonder, he's been out of the NFL for like a decade.
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's a really long, and I just, like, is he going to come in and try to be, we're just going to power O it, power O and duo, and we're going to run counter. It's like, okay, great. You're going to go 7-10.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to happen. I don't think they'll beat themselves as much as they did with Staley, because Staley just, I've never seen a coach in my life who would say, like, they play the Chiefs, we're going to leave wide open all game, Travis Kelce. He's not going to cover him. But we're going to shut down Justin Watson. Like, okay, congrats. I don't think they'll beat themselves as much, but man, like, I just feel like we're going to look at the Chargers and scratch our heads at times. Why are they running on 2nd and 9? And then Harbaugh's going to get really upset about being asked about it after the game.
Right. That's the thing for me. Is that like Harbaugh is so used to, I don't want to equate it to a dictatorship, right? Because I think that's a bit dramatic.
No, but look, in college sports,
yes,
it is. It really, like, you are the judge, jury, and executioner. You are. Especially those types of programs.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when, I obviously grew up in New York. I remember when Jim Boeheim coached Syracuse.
Right.
My buddy has a deep-seated, passionate hatred of Jim Boeheim that I don't even fully understand, but just hates him, right? And I remember, like, Boeheim was asked a question once, and if I'm recalling this correctly, it was something to do with, like, his salary at the school. And it was like, okay, it's a little bit of an odd question, but also, like, you're a public figure, like your salary's out there, like everyone else.
Public. Yeah.
And he was irate about the question. And the same thing was true with Jim Calhoun at UConn. Like I actually really, I vividly remember that one. They got like so unbelievably offended by it, and I was like, you work in a public school. Like, everyone knows how much, like, what are you talking about? Like, everyone knows what you make.
Right.
Like, how offended, they were just so, like, I'm not going to answer this question from some student reporter. And you're like, all right, guy. Like, are you that? Like, but again, to your point, they're never challenged on anything. And a big part of the reason is, by the way, for those who might be like, well, why? Why aren't they challenged? So when you're coaching the Chargers, there's a lot of media members at your practices. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of media members at your game. When you coach at the University of Michigan, as big as a program as that is, you're in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Like,
right.
Those outlets up there, the radio stations, the newspapers, they have to play ball with you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to ask you a bunch of hard questions. They can't. They can't afford to lose the access to you. They can't have you freeze them out. So you have to be like, hey, so Jim, can you talk about 3rd and 6th there and why that was such a great play? They have to do that.
Right.
Whereas if you're coaching an NFL team, they give you, hey, Jim, why'd you run on 2nd and 9? That sucked. What is he going to do? Like, there's 30 other outlets, right? So it's different. It's a much different ball game from that perspective.
It is, and I think that's something that's going to play into his tenure in LA. And it was not something that I necessarily anticipated to show right away, but it's just something that I did think of as like, look, it is very different from college to the pro. Like, look, I went to Chiefs training camp almost every day and took videos of their practice and posted them online. You would not be able to do that at a college one. Like, no. Coaches are so, number one, paranoid. And like, this is coaches at all levels. Coaches at all levels are paranoid and secretive, and they think that everyone is trying to steal their stuff, right? Everyone's trying to gain an edge on them. And like, that's just how they are. Like, that's just how coaches are. And for them to have total control of their program is exactly what they want. Look, I mean, Andy Reid's the same way, right? Like, Andy Reid wants total control of his team. Oh, yeah. Like, that's how it is. Like, these coaches want that.
I love when I go to the training camp tours or the training camp practice as part of my tour. And I remember when I went to Berea last year in Cleveland. And they have this like big outer fence around their practice facility, right? They're like if you're in the public, you can like look through the fence and see the practice.
Yeah.
They tarped off their entire fence so no one could see in. And I remember sitting there in the pouring rain watching Deshaun Watson throw lawn darts over and over and over. And I was like, you know what? They should take the tarps down so that everyone can look in and see this. And the Browns will lull everyone into a false sense of security this year. Like, the only reason to keep the tarps up at that point was to make fans believe they should still buy tickets. It was ridiculous. But like, teams do this crap. You know, it's just like when you're there, and like, you know this, but you get away with it because you're in the crowd. Good for you. Like, when you're in the media tent in Kansas City, and by the way, it's just true of every team. It's just
yeah.
They'll be like, you can film periods 1, 3, 7, and those team periods are like Butker kicking and stretching.
Right.
God forbid you tweet out anything else. Like the Bears, when I'm at Bears practice, if a guy blows his knee out, I can't tweet it out. We're not allowed to tweet anything out. So we were at joint practice, and Chris Evans blows out his patellar tendon, and so does one of their backup tackles. And we're all seeing this. Like, they're getting carted off. It's brutal. Like, the backup tackle, I got to be honest, it was actually almost, like, sickening. Like, how he was, like, screaming.
Oh.
And nobody can tweet any of this because they're like, no, you don't know that he's done for the year. I'm like, buddy, I got to tell you, I saw the injury. He's out for the year. Like, they're air casting this guy. He is sobbing and screaming like he didn't roll his ankle. He's done. Well, you can't say, I'm like, can I tweet out that he's got a lower body injury that looks serious? No. Can't assume it's a lower body. I mean, it's just like ridiculous shit like that. Like, yeah. But teams do that, and it's insane.
Right. And that's coaches want total control, which goes back to my dictatorship point. Like, it is kind of is. I thought I was being dramatic by making it, but I'm glad that you helped assert my point.
Exactly.
That it is a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Last thing we should talk about here, Atlanta Falcons, going back to the Atlanta Falcons, they're choosing to sit Michael Penix for the preseason game. Interesting choice to, number one, draft a quarterback after you sign another quarterback for $300 million. And then also that quarterback that you drafted be like almost 30. That's dramatic. But he is not a young quarterback prospect. And then to decide to not play your young quarterback prospect who won't play for, if everything goes right, at least 3 to 4 years, it is quite possibly one of the most confounding decisions. Like, look, I think Atlanta has done a lot of things right this offseason. When you look at the roster additions, everything that they've done to like try to become a good football team, I think they've done a lot of things right. But when it comes to how they've managed the quarterback position, how they drafted, does not make any sense. Like those things just do not make any sense, and it kind of comes to the position that is legitimately the most important in all of football.
I appreciate that the Falcons were like, we've seen enough out of Michael Penix. We're good. Like, okay, well, what? Like, is he going to start? Yeah, no, he's not going to start, but we've seen enough.
Who is their third stringer? I'm going to look that up.
God, who is his third stringer? Because Ritter's gone. He's in Arizona.
Thank goodness. That guy sucked. No way. No way. Taylor Heineke.
Wow. Best third stringer in the league.
I think so. Like I legitimately like.
It's funny because I thought of Taylor Heineke, but I'm like, nah, he's not still there.
Taylor Heineke.
By the way, the Desmond Ritter slander can stand as far as I'm concerned. Like super nice kid when I interviewed him. I was at Senior Bowl when he was there, obviously coming out as a rookie. And I asked him, and I will preface this by saying it was very early in the morning. But I asked him, who do you compare your game to? Just a softball question, right? Like just an easy, like tweet this out, throw it in the story, like no problem, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I would say that I had the athletic ability of Ryan Tannehill, and I had the decision-making of Deshaun Watson. And, bro, I shit you not. When he said that, everybody in the media group, I just kind of looked at each other like, that was a choice?
Yeah.
Okay. It has not worked that well. It has not worked that well.
Also, I should clarify this. Desmond Ritter did come out after the allegations on Deshaun Watson. So, like...
Yes. No, yeah, it was very, like
that had already
not
happened.
Popular to be like, yeah, I would compare myself in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, he didn't mean it in that way, but, like...
Correct.
Just to say that, I was like, bro, awareness, like if we're doing Madden rankings, awareness is at like -20. It was one of the why I just like I wanted to follow up, but then somebody else jumped in and was like, have you ever had a visit yet with the Panthers? And you're like, okay.
Those are especially the combine. The combine, those are the worst ones.
Hit with a tack hammer, every one of them.
Have you talked to the Steelers yet? Formal or informal? It's just like,
bro, let me give you a little pro tip. They've talked to everybody. Okay? That's why the teams are here. They're not coming here talking to the 7 guys who just got in their mock draft on Draft Tech. Like, you're talking to everybody. Oh, my God. These people are the worst. And I get it. Like, I play the game. I understand it. Like, your editor is going to scream at you to no end if you're a local beat guy and you didn't ask that question. It's a stupid fucking question. Then they should stop asking it. Anyone who's asked that should have their credential ripped away, and they should be thrown out of the convention center on their ass. It drives me nuts. And I know they have to do it, but the NFL should step up and do the right thing. And when they walk these kids up to the podium, they should walk them up there and go, okay, here's the list of the people and the teams that have interviewed this player. And then it just says, like, Brett Veach, Kansas City Chiefs. And we can all just like, oh, look at that. He's visited with the Chiefs. And we can all move on. But instead, we have to spend half of the 15-minute availability going, excuse me, have you interviewed with the Bills? Have you interviewed the Dolphins? It is the worst. It is absolute, especially when you're getting somewhere with somebody. Like I remember interviewing Kayvon Thibodeau when he was coming out. And he started talking about how like he has a love of chess and how he views football as chess. And like Mike Tanier and I were like really drilling down. And some guys like, have you visited with the Steelers? It's the closest I've ever come to getting into a fist fight with somebody in a press scrum. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we were actually getting something really interesting out of this kid.
Right.
That, like, you can build off of, which, by the way, I did a year later when I saw him at Lions-Giants joint practice, and I pulled him off to the side. I'm like, hey, man, like, has chess helped you, like, through your first year of football? And he gave an unbelievably insightful answer. And thank God, Joe Jerkoff wasn't there. Like, excuse me, are you going to visit with the Steelers if you get the free agency? The worst, the absolute worst people alive.
I almost have a similar story where I was talking to Javon Foster this season. When we were at the Combine, I was talking to Javon Foster about playing tackle at the next level, and obviously a guy who was highly drafted, a day 2 pick for the Missouri Tigers. And I was talking about, hey, you played left tackle, you're probably going to be asked to play either guard or right tackle. Like, what does that look like? Because you played a lot of left tackle. And we were, discussing like the versatility of like an offensive lineman and how that's so important. And then all of a sudden I just hear, "You're maybe the Steelers." Why is it always the Steelers too? You notice that? Why is it always asking about the Steelers?
It was too. It really was. I was insane like that.
Yeah, it is quite something. But yeah, the Falcons, man. I don't know if I would have guessed Taylor Heineke. I think you could have gave me 20 guesses and I would not have gotten to Dell.
I wouldn't have got that
Heineke. John Paddock also on their roster, quarterback from Illinois, rookie, undrafted from this.
I don't know if he's gonna make the team.
Probably not. Probably not. You can keep 3, right, this year? Like, you can keep 3 and 1 not count for the active game day or something like that. I can't remember how they changed that rule. I got to look that rule up.
Yes. It's like, you basically have an extra roster slot.
That's good. Hopefully the Falcons won't need it, but with Kirk Cousins' history, they might. I think that's going to do it for this week's edition of That Football Show. Went a little long, but I appreciate you guys listening all the way through. Look, we're going to have real football. As we're recording this, 15 days from the first regular season game for the Kansas City Chiefs. They obviously host the Baltimore Ravens. We'll be all over it for you here at KC Sports Network. Make sure to stay tuned. We'll also have a post-game show. If you are watching the Chiefs and Bears, we'll have a post-game show right afterwards. I'm not sure how long it'll be because it's a night game, and probably not going to go too late after that contest. But make sure to keep it locked in here at KC Sports Network. We'll have you covered. For Matt Verderame, I'm Tucker Franklin. We will catch you guys next week on That Football Show.